Hi guys, I'm back again today with another video, and today we're checking out how American fire departments are getting people killed. Well, I'm not so sure about this, but we're gonna find out how. Um, this could be our first time seeing US fire departments, how it works, how it's done, and all that stuff. So before we start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and let's begin.
Firefighters. Everybody loves them. They're heroic, they've got cool gear, they rescue cats from trees, and they've got sexy calendars and giant
They
hoses. And
do?
let's face it, nobody ever wrote a song called F the Fire Department. But there's a crisis of road safety in the US. In particular, pedestrian deaths have increased by 77% since 2010, the highest they've been since 1982, and a trend that is not being seen in other developed nations. Advocates, urban planners, and some of the better traffic engineers are raising the alarm, pun intended, that one of the biggest factors that makes the US more dangerous than other countries is street design. American roads are too wide, vehicle speeds are too fast, and American street design is fundamentally dangerous. But there's one big thing that stands in the way of building safer streets: the fire department, specifically their outdated and dangerous regulations. American fire trucks are absolutely huge compared to their international counterparts. This means that even quiet residential streets also need to be absolutely huge in order to fit them. And yet, decades of research has proven that wider streets lead to higher speeds and more fatal crashes. In the US and Canada, things need to change because right now, fire departments are getting people killed. There are a disturbingly large number of safe street projects in North America that have been postponed, watered down, or canceled entirely because of opposition from fire departments. Baltimore was supposed to install 10 miles of new bike lanes downtown, but the fire department said that it would make the streets too small for its trucks and aggressively fought against the plan. And similar objections happened in Arlington and in Los Angeles. In Peekskill, New York, the community created a car-free street during the lockdown, which the fire department opposed at the first possible opportunity. And in Toronto, the complaints of the fire department have been used to propose removing a protected bike lane. All of this potential progress to make streets safer was lost because of giant fire trucks. But hey, we need those big fire trucks to fight fires, right? Here's a question for you. What do firefighters do? You're probably thinking, they fight fires. When your house is on fire, they put it out. And I can forgive you for thinking that because they're called firefighters. But actually, less than 4% of fire truck calls are for building fires. That's right, less than 4%. A US study showed that nationally, about 8% of calls were for false alarms, double that of fires. But a whopping 64% of all fire department calls were for medical emergencies or rescue, 16 times that of fires. And yet, North America is still sending fire trucks to all of those emergencies. This explains one of the things that surprised me about the Netherlands and what made it hard for me to film my own footage for this video. I very often see police cars and ambulances on the street, but I don't often see fire trucks. That's because here, fire trucks are usually reserved for the emergencies that, need a fire truck. Incidentally, there is a difference between a fire engine and a fire truck. Fire engines are primarily designed for firefighting. They carry water pumps, hoses, and water tanks to fight fires, while fire trucks are equipped with long aerial ladders or platforms and are primarily designed for rescue operations and providing access to high places. But colloquially, most Americans say fire trucks to mean both, so that's what I'm going to use in this video. The British, who colloquially use fire engine for both, can get upset and write me a strongly worded letter in response. I also apologize in advance for the lack of metric units in this video. Yes, imperial units are ridiculous, but we're talking about America here, so get prepared for feet, gallons, and Diet Coke hamburgers per bald eagle. The morphing role of the American Fire Department as the response to nearly every emergency is one of the reasons their fire trucks have become so bloated. They have to carry more than just fire equipment. They have to be prepared for medical emergencies, gas leaks, hazmat situations, biochemical attacks, and more. These giant do-everything fire trucks mean that fire departments are hauling all this firefighting equipment with them to every emergency call. Equipment like 1,000 gallons of water for a fire engine or a 100-foot ladder for a fire truck, even though that equipment is needed in just a small percent of emergencies. Now, if you're asking why they're sending fire trucks to all these emergencies, the reason is that a lot of places in America don't have as many ambulances as they do fire trucks. So, when an old woman has a heart attack, a fire truck is likely to be the closest vehicle to respond. And
Mm.
I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that typically treating an old woman for a heart attack does not actually require 1,000 gallons of water. Now, safety regulations rightfully dictate a maximum response time for different kinds of emergencies, and this is especially important for medical emergencies like cardiac arrest, where quick treatment with a defibrillator can significantly impact outcomes. But it seems crazy to send a fire truck, and reminder, that's a 40-foot truck carrying a 100-foot ladder or 1,000 gallons of water to every medical emergency. But there are alternatives, of course, like sending an ambulance or even a motorcycle that could provide immediate care on scene while waiting for specialized emergency services to arrive, which is common in lots of places. There's even precedent for this in North America. Daytona Beach uses emergency response motorcycles, and they have an average response time of 3 minutes. The rest of the US, which
I
uses
think we need that. At least like one or two people go first for whatever rescue situation is going on or medical situation that's going on. And then obviously the trucks will be coming or the ambulances or whatever we need will be coming as well. But the motorcycles have to go first, right? Because they're faster, they can evade traffic, they have their kits with them if they need to like do some stuff, right? And they were good. They can assess the place and then they know which backup to call. Or on their way, they're like, okay, maybe we need this, that, and I don't know, but they've probably figured it out. And why are we not incorporating this? Right.
large trucks, averages 7 minutes. Because it is always going to take longer for a giant fire truck. And reminder, that's a 40-foot truck carrying a 100-foot ladder or 1,000 gallons of water to make it through a crowded city than a motorcycle. But fire departments routinely argue that we can't build any infrastructure that might delay those big trucks even more. When I was an advocate, I watched fire departments try to veto bike lane projects on the grounds that it would slow down their response times. Because, yeah, bike lanes slow down fire trucks, right? Just look at this clip from the Netherlands where the firefighters are stuck in, oh wait, never mind. They're driving down the bike lane. Yeah, smaller emergency vehicles can actually benefit from the same infrastructure that keeps people safe on bicycles. In fact, in many places, it's better to build bike lanes wider to improve emergency response times. When
Actually, that's smart because they can just like we can use this as double purpose. Bike lanes, X emergency vehicle lane, right? Actually, that is smart. So the problem is not that the road is too narrow for them to pass, but the problem is their trucks are too big, right?
the cycling superhighways, still the dumbest name ever, were built in London, they were specifically designed to be used by emergency vehicles. Here it is in action. And I can tell you
That's
from
smart.
experience, a bunch of people on bicycles can clear the road way faster than any line of cars. Hands down,
True.
it's not even comparable. Of course, this is only possible if the bike
Because
lane
they're small, so they can just like fit into like small spaces. They just jump off out of the way of the truck and they're good to go. But cars have to like find a place to put themselves, right? It's harder to be faster to like to get away to get out of the way of a truck than it is a bicycle. Am I making sense?
lanes are big enough, but also if your fire trucks can actually fit in the bike lane, which may not be possible for many giant North American fire trucks. There are a few other reasons why North American fire trucks are larger than their European counterparts. In the US and Canada, fire trucks are typically built on a large custom chassis, which allows purchasers to keep adding more and more features as the trucks get bigger and bigger. European and Asian fire trucks are typically built on standardized commercial chassis from local companies like MAN, Mercedes, Renault, Scania, or in this case, Isuzu. These are basically regular commercial trucks that have been adapted for use in firefighting. Using a standardized chassis makes the trucks cheaper and more maneuverable, and they also have better crash safety too. But using smaller trucks does mean that fire departments have to figure out how to more effectively use the space in their
I
trucks.
was gonna
If
say
you compare the
they'll
inside of an
carry less
American fire
water.
truck with the inside of a European truck, you can see there's a huge difference.
Oh,
It's
that's a
not
lot
that
of
European
space.
firefighters are less prepared, they just pack things better in the smaller space available. Which is why, when you see the absurd size of American fire trucks discussed online, there will be some American firefighter in the comments who tries to set everyone straight by typing a laundry list of things that American fire trucks carry, justifying why their trucks need to be so big. Which is then followed by a German firefighter saying, "What the hell are you talking about? We carry all that stuff too, but our trucks aren't enormous." The American fire truck is also overspec'd. While a European engine will have just enough horsepower for the pumps, an American engine will typically be more than 20% higher horsepower than required, which makes the size of the truck much bigger. And European fire trucks use the minimum number of valves, typically 2 to 4, which the pump operator manually adjusts to achieve proper pressure, while North American fire trucks often have 7 to 14 valves based on a system of pre-connected lines. They're really living up to the US stereotype of getting the biggest and most overpowered truck you can get just for that one time you might.
The bigger the better, the better. Maybe that's their motto in life. It's like let's make everything bigger than every country in the world so that we can be the best. But anyways, their houses are bigger, so maybe that's they're gonna say we need more water because our houses or our buildings are bigger. I don't know if that's an argument, but yeah.
Actually need it. We also hear that American fire trucks have to be so big because of the length of the ladders. Because, of course, American cities have big buildings that need big ladders. Look, if you go to any city with skyscrapers like Tokyo or Hong Kong, I'm sure you'll see the same thing. Oh, wait, no. Actually, they use the same size fire trucks that the rest of the world uses. Look at how tiny this fire truck looks in Tokyo. And here's a fire truck and a fire engine in Hong Kong.
I feel like our fire trucks
And
are like
yet,
that.
European and Asian fire trucks have ladders that reach just as high, even though the trucks themselves are shorter and have a smaller turning radius. And what's absurd about this is that even if larger ladders are required where there are tall buildings, why are the exact same fire trucks used in suburbia where there's nothing but single family homes? And the issue again is safety. Giant trucks mean the streets need to be too big, but the trucks themselves are more dangerous to people on the street too. Like all big trucks, they're heavier, less maneuverable, and take longer to stop. Many of them also have lower visibility, making it harder for the driver to see people who are walking or cycling. And if you hit someone with a fire truck, who do you call? Another fire truck? In 2005, the Discovery Channel aired an episode of Mean Machines where a US fire truck, used on a US military base in the UK, was put into head-to-head competition with a local UK fire truck. They had them run a mock obstacle course to see which one was more maneuverable. It was embarrassing. Look at this. A professional fire truck driver is running over cones, left and right because these vehicles are insane. Meanwhile, the European truck navigated the course with ease. It wasn't even a contest. We're constantly being told that our streets need to be insanely wide because maneuvering a fire truck is so important. But then they buy these vehicles that are inherently unmaneuverable. And while we're comparing European fire trucks, I just need to say that European sirens are better and less annoying too. They use a lower pitch frequency, which means that they can both be heard further away and they cause less hearing damage. Half as Interesting has a great video on why European sirens are better,
Well, that
link
will
in
be
the
an
description.
interesting watch.
These differences in fire truck design are often presented by American fire departments as a funny quirk of how different countries do things differently. But of course, it's not so funny when the fire trucks have such big implications for road design. Giant fire trucks require a lot of room to pass. They have huge turning radii, and they take up even more space when they extend their ladders. To accommodate these factors, fire departments demand bigger and bigger roads. Even in a very urban city like San Francisco, the fire department requires all roads in new developments to be 30% wider than the code minimum of 20 feet. So every street, even residential streets, end up with 13-foot freeway-sized lanes in each direction. And for the benefit of most of my audience who uses metric, that means car lanes that are almost 4 meters wide. These wider lanes lead people to drive faster, which means more and deadlier car crashes. On a 30-mile-per-hour road, changing the lane width from 9 feet to 12 feet increases crashes by 50%. And it's not just street width. Fire departments fight other traffic calming measures, even roundabouts, on the grounds that it will take them longer to get to emergencies. Roundabouts are almost non-existent in the US unless you're in Carmel, Indiana or something, but they're extremely common in Europe because traffic flows better and they're often safer than signalized intersections. Replacing an intersection with a roundabout can reduce injury and fatal collision by 78 to 82% depending on the type of intersection. That seems like a great idea that can save lots of lives, right? But some fire departments actively campaign against safety measures like roundabouts because they don't accommodate 20-foot wide streets all the way around. They argue that having to slow down to navigate the roundabout creates an unacceptable delay and every second counts getting to an emergency. But how true is that really? Even though most Americans are scared to use them, roundabouts are very efficient and actually improve traffic flow. And some estimates show that changing signalized intersections to roundabouts can actually speed up emergency response times by about 30 seconds. But there are fire departments who won't even consider allowing this because they have a blanket policy that opposes all forms of traffic calming. The US also has a much higher traffic signal density than a place like the Netherlands, even though the Netherlands has a much higher population density. Countries like the Netherlands have eliminated the need for so many traffic signals because they've implemented more efficient tools, like roundabouts and roads with fewer intersections. That means that traveling the same distance, a fire truck in America will hit way more traffic signals than a fire truck in the Netherlands, which means way more intersections where a fire truck needs to slow down to avoid a potential collision. Fire departments that have these kinds of blanket rules are not only putting more people in danger from crashes, they're also getting to emergencies slower. And here's the really sad part. 5.3% of all emergencies that fire trucks respond to in the US are motor vehicle crashes. That's more than building fires. So these wide streets allow fire trucks to quickly respond to the car crashes that are caused by these wide streets. And since fire trucks are so big, roads need to be made bigger, which makes more people crash their cars, which means more fire trucks are needed, which means we need to build more wide roads. And you might say, well, this keeps the fire department in business, but that's not the way things work. Fire departments are just a cost for cities. Nobody wants this. The good news is that the fire department regulations that have created these dangerous conditions could change right now, even without replacing a single American fire truck. I talked to Scott Brody, who conducted a master's thesis on street design and is now writing a book on fire access in smaller streets, and he has several proposals based on international best practices, like adding more pre-positioned hoses to start firefighting before trucks even arrive, more on-site pumps or standpipes in the city to accept water from a pumper parked farther away, like is common in malls and skyscrapers, adding sprinklers to more classes of residential structures which can contain or fully extinguish fires on their own, changing building regulations to allow splitting large buildings like shopping malls into smaller buildings to prevent fires and especially smoke from spreading too quickly, adding publicly accessible automatic defibrillators or AEDs so that heart attack victims can get treatment faster. Bystander defibrillation is common here in the Netherlands, where public AEDs are combined with an app that provides the location of AEDs and alerts when a nearby person requires CPR. And when you load the app, you see that there are a lot of them around. So if you live in the Netherlands, please install the Hartslag Nu app. It might save somebody's life someday. I'll put a link in the description. Incidentally, the cardiac arrest survival rate in the Netherlands is roughly 2.5 times that of the US. Scott also suggests infrastructural changes for new developments which could, with a little work, be retrofitted onto existing streets, like connecting street grids so that fire trucks can get around blockages and turn around without needing giant cul-de-sacs. Instead of requiring an entire street to be wide enough for a fire truck to park while cars can pass, The city can just have emergency spaces every so often, like is common in the Netherlands. This just looks like an oversized sidewalk, but this sign makes it clear that there's a water connection here, and this space is specifically designed for fire trucks. Once you know what to look for, you start seeing these spaces all over the city. Here's one right next to that AED I showed a moment ago. And when they're not being used for fire trucks, they're extra spaces for people. Isn't this nice? This is what's possible when your city moves past, let's make every road as wide as possible for fire trucks, and starts thinking, how do we integrate emergency infrastructure into the urban fabric? And if for some reason emergency services do need to set up outside one of these designated spaces, just let them block the street, knowing that cars can pass by just going around the block. We need to accept that drivers can be mildly inconvenienced when there's a serious emergency. All these changes would allow us to build safer streets today without stopping the fire department from doing their job. But North America does also need to reduce the size of their fire trucks. We should be immediately swapping in better, safer trucks right now on the pre-planned regular vehicle replacement schedule that cities and fire departments are using already. This is what they're doing in San Francisco, where they're replacing the old trucks with new ones that are shorter and more maneuverable, yet have the same pumping capacity. They're still bigger than European fire trucks, but the point is, it is possible to get rid of these huge trucks over time. Because even if you took out all the bike lanes and roundabouts and pedestrian areas, there are still going to be obstacles in the city. There will be traffic, there will be construction, or any number of other things that get in the way of fire trucks. So you need fire trucks that can maneuver around obstacles. Not this. But trucks aside, there are so many ways to make a city better while also allowing better access for emergency vehicles. Wide bike lanes are best for cycling because they allow people to pass and ride side by side. And as I mentioned, these wider bike paths can be used by emergency vehicles. And while consistently wide bike paths should be the priority, some parts can be built with flexi posts, which can be driven over by emergency vehicles. That's what these posts are meant to do. They're supposed to be driven over. Here's how I've seen manufacturers advertising them at traffic engineering trade shows.
I
Although
never
the cheap ones
knew.
don't always pop up like they're supposed to. Converting car lanes to dedicated transit lanes is the best way to speed up transit vehicles and to get more people to use public transportation because transit can be faster than driving in traffic. In many cities in the Netherlands, roads have dedicated bus and tram lanes, and these are routinely used by emergency vehicles. And pedestrianized streets are amazing. They make for lively public spaces that are safe and comfortable for people walking and cycling. And yet every single time I talk about car-free streets, someone responds with, "That's stupid. What about emergency vehicles?" And I'm just like, ugh, car-free does not mean fire truck-free. Of course, emergency vehicles will still be allowed here, and in fact, they get through faster on a pedestrian street because there isn't much traffic. However, there is something in cities that genuinely does get in the way of fire trucks, but for some reason, these same people seem to completely ignore it. The Baltimore Fire Department made this video to show how several streets made narrower by recently installed bike lanes cause problems for their largest trucks. You can see how they're having difficulty putting the stabilizers out for the ladder trucks. Wow, this is terrible. And look at this fire truck having problems getting through. The driver can't even open his door to get out of the truck. If only the street weren't so narrow because of the bike lane. Except look at those videos again. What is getting in the way of the fire truck?
Cars.
It's the cars. Cars are the number one thing that prevents fire trucks from getting to the scene of an emergency by a huge margin. Fire trucks even get stuck on highways where there's no traffic calming, no pedestrian areas, no bike lanes. We also know from decades of research that wide roads and street parking induces demand for more driving, which causes more traffic that fills up the roads. And whether it's a jam-packed intersection that forces fire trucks to slow to a crawl or curb parking that prevents them from setting up their equipment, cars routinely slow down emergency vehicles. And ultimately, this is what annoys me so much about the objections from fire departments. When there's a proposal to install bike lanes, the fire department is there. "We can't do that. Our fire trucks won't fit down the street." When the cities want to narrow streets or install traffic calming to make the roads safer, the fire department is there. We can't do that, it'll slow down our fire trucks. But when American cities want to remove street parking like was done here in Amsterdam, where's the fire department? Why aren't they out there saying, yes, we want to remove street parking too, because parked cars make it harder to do our job?
Hmm.
Or when cities want to build dedicated transit lanes, bus rapid transit, or new tram lines, where's the fire department? Why aren't they out there saying, yes, transit lanes could become our emergency express lanes,
Yeah.
speeding up response times? And when cities want to build car free streets and reduce the number of cars on the road through congestion charges or restrictions on through traffic, where's the fire department? Why aren't they out there saying, yes, cars are the number one thing that prevents us from getting to emergencies on time? A network of car free streets would be perfect for us to avoid traffic. Yet somehow, instead of coming out in support of stuff like this, the fire department only seems to show up when someone threatens the car centric status quo. There is more than enough evidence that things could be done better, that cities could be safer, cleaner, quieter, and more livable, while also improving emergency response times. But when advocates point this out, they're often belittled by the fire departments who tell us we have no idea what we're talking about, as they refuse to even acknowledge the international examples of how it's done better, without the dangerous streets. Or they'll give us a patronizing line like, that's there and this is here. Different environments call for different equipment, which is the laziest possible response. But even if that were true, are you really telling me that this environment and this environment somehow call for exactly the same kind of truck? And that truck, for both those environments, somehow also needs to be twice as big as the fire trucks you'll find in Europe? Really? Come on. And I'm sure I'll get exactly those same kind of comments on this video too, because I've received them many times before. I'll be dismissed as an ignorant YouTuber despite the fact that I involved multiple experts in the research for this video. And I am absolutely not the only one pointing out these insane discrepancies between how firefighting is done in the US and Canada compared to how it's done in Europe or Asia. And most importantly, without the dangerous streets. Strong Towns has multiple articles on this topic, for example, and I'll leave some links to them and lots of other sources in the description, such as this article that talks about how the US has more fire deaths than European countries and significantly more road deaths as well. They're clearly taking the wrong approach by every metric. And look, I don't want to shit on fire departments too much because they perform one of the hardest and most dangerous jobs around, and ultimately they're dedicated to keeping
Obviously, the people who work there, like them, it's not their fault because maybe they don't know better. Maybe they haven't read any articles. They don't know. They haven't seen like statistics, comparisons. They don't know. They haven't done their job to like research or hear it out, studies. It's the people who are in the higher ups who make these decisions. They probably didn't also do their research. They just hear it and they're like, nah, it's not gonna work, right? They don't actually like sit there and research and learn how this is going to improve a lot of things. Or maybe it's going to be a lot of work and they're lazy.
us safe. But part of keeping us safe is acknowledging where the actual dangers are coming from. Dangers like speed-related car crashes, getting hit by a car while cycling, or medical services arriving too late because the truck's too big to get through traffic. We all have our blind spots, and if all you've ever known is car-dependent cities where cars are everywhere and there's no alternative, then I can understand how many of these fire departments have trouble thinking of things in any other way. And it is reasonable for fire departments to be conservative and skeptical of change when lives could be at risk. But there also comes a time when fire departments need to look internationally and to realize that things can be done better. We want firefighters to be able to do their jobs and save us from fires. But we also don't want lots of people getting injured or killed by cars. So please, fire departments, work with advocates on this. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to be the one to write the song Fuck the Fire Department. And trust me, nobody wants to hear an old white guy rapping. Fire trucks and
Maybe
roads
you
are
can ask
both a
someone to
lot
do it.
bigger in the US than in Europe. But there's something else that's bigger too, the problem of data privacy. But for that problem, we have Incogni. I started using
Incogni. Okay, I think it's all ads now. Let's see, let's see.
sites that publish detailed personal profiles.
Yep, yep, yep. I think that's it. So that was a very interesting one. I haven't necessarily thought about like how the fire departments actually like, you know, Like I didn't think that the trucks were bigger. I have never it never came to mind. I'm not necessarily sure how our fire truck sizes are. I bet they're the small ones, like the one that we saw a while ago, like Japan, Philippines fire truck. I think. I'm not sure. I mean, I've seen them before, but I don't know the size comparison at all. So that's why. I mean, I've never seen an American one in person, so I don't know how to. Okay, we use the Suzuki ones mostly, obviously. Yeah, so they're kind of like, yeah, they're the ones that we've seen, like the small ones, right? They're not necessarily big like the Americans. Obviously, they're not gonna fit our roads because our roads are small as Famalama. So yeah, yeah. Now that I see that, I'm like, damn, they're huge. Because when I see fire trucks, I'm like, this trucks are huge. But if in my eyes those are big, then the American ones are crazy then, right? Wow. I hope that the department, the fire department in the in the America, in America will actually sit down and think about the people, right? And stop worrying about the work that is gonna come in play to get to that results, right? Because it's gonna take a lot to make all this happen, and maybe they're just lazy, but I hope that they think of the people. If they care so much about saving people, they should think that this is going to help in saving even more people. So anyways, beautiful people, thank you for joining, and will I see you tomorrow? I don't think so, but I will try. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.